Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Post. My next guest believes brands win when they make it about their community, not themselves. So the audience must be at the heart of any content strategy to build trust and generate meaningful dialogue. He strives to expand company horizons surrounding social media, specializing in building dynamic and bold strategies that deliver audience value and support business growth. Without further ado, please welcome to the show the head of social media at the Bank of London, Alex Taylor Noble. Alex, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Amazing. Well, listen, I'm so thrilled to have you here today because anytime I think about social media and the finance industry, I always think of you. You are quite the expert, and I'm just excited to pick your brain and learn more about how you approach social strategy and how you're using social to support business growth. So I'm very excited to have you here.
No, listen, very happy to be on here as well. I think it's something podcast that I've been aware of for a while. Obviously, I know you guys at Oktopost very well, and the little content nuggets and things that you get on LinkedIn are perfect and digestible for the community. So yeah, hopefully we can give them some more today.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So I'll start you off with an easy one. Could you just give our listeners a brief look at your professional journey and how you found yourself as the head of social media at the Bank of London?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it definitely didn't start in finance. I found myself here with an interesting journey that began similarly to you in fashion lifestyle kind of blogging. And as a result of that, I was running their social media channels and really started to get a big enjoyment factor out of the engagement and how you could start to build communities based upon what you're posting about and knowing that you're catering to that audience by understanding what they respond to and what they're receptive to. So from there, I effectively started working in social media, mainly in community management and in content strategy in the sports industry. And then from there, kind of took a bit of a beeline into the fintech space, where there was a really cool opportunity at my previous company to kind of build their social strategy. And that, was kind of a movement that I took from being in the weeds every day in the community management and content posting and content creation aspect to thinking more overall about an overarching strategy and how social really supports a business instead of it being like a silo workspace, which I think it's seen to be by many still. And then from there, this really cool opportunity came up with the Bank of London. We're a new startup bank in the clearing and settlement sector. It basically provided me with a blank canvas from which to build a strategy from the ground up and really try and take everything that I've hopefully learned from previous experiences and build something that can really drive value for our audiences. So that's where I am today.
Amazing. Well, I totally can feel you on the community management side. I think that is what first really excited me about social media when I was still in college. I was in education at the time, but I loved social media because you can connect with so many people. And that's what I think my passion for social really started with that. So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, I think what you, sorry, I was just going to say, I think what you
Go
just
ahead.
said there and community is so key because, I mean, you said it in your lovely intro. I'm a believer in brands win when they make it, about the communities and not themselves. And I think there is a real, unfortunately, a real issue with lots of brands working on assumption and thinking that because they're in the weeds of what they do, they know exactly, or they assume to know exactly what their audience wants to consume. When really it should be flipped entirely and actually, less talking, more listening, so to speak, and build a community based on what they want to consume and not the other way around. So just wanted to say I agree.
No, I totally agree with that. I think this year is going to be the year of you have to put people at the heart of everything you do, whether it's your employees, your social media audience, your customers. If you're not doing that, you're not going to win. And especially when it comes to social, you have to give your audience content that they're going to care about. Because if you don't give them a reason to trust you or care about what you're posting, what is the point? You can never build a community around that. So
Oh, definitely. And I think in the banking space and financial services where, it's seen to be, each corporate brand has got quite this like hard, not very soft sort of corporate exterior. And I think the best way to break that down is by putting humans in front, because I mean, I know everyone said this all the time, but B2B, it's still human to human. Social channels, the algorithms prefer interpersonal interaction. So that's what you really want to strive for. You want people to represent your brand as much as your brand representing them on social media. And I think that's I agree. A real trend for this year is how to break down that corporate brand and humanize it so that content becomes relatable. You start to build the trust element, and I think it all stems back to, as you say, it's got to be what they want to consume, and the only way you're going to figure that out is by understanding your audience and listening to them, instead of simply, I guess, casting out this arrogant monologue that what's best for them consistently and continuously. So, yeah, I would agree entirely with what you said.
Yeah. And it's funny because you see it everywhere. We're always posting like B2B is human to human, be more human, be authentic. But a lot of brands still aren't doing it. And it's so funny because like everyone is talking about it, but some people are still not doing it. But I want to talk about how you approached social strategy when you started, because you said you were starting with a blank slate. So I would love to know how you kind of got started. And also, are you a team of one, or do you have people under you, or are you totally going this just a one-person team?
Yeah, so I guess where to start. Firstly, I was new to the banking world, which is a very heavily regulated world, where although could be seen as a startup or as a disruptor, the fact of the matter is there are lots of regulatory hoops and compliance issues that we need to be very careful with, of course. I had history in working in betting, in gambling, which was, managing that kind of aspect. So I kind of had dealt with lots of regulations, but obviously that's kind of a slightly different beast.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing for me, before we got going with any kind of strategy, was education and insight, and speaking internally and trying to understand what we can and what we can't do. And there's no way you can just learn that in a few weeks, new on the job. But I think the first approach is, am I a team of one? Yes, in terms of social and digital activity. At the moment, yes, I am. It's myself and my boss who work, and we manage our corporate affairs team, which is effectively everything reputation when it comes to the Bank of London. But the key for me was, okay, I might be a team of one when it comes to actual social output, but when it comes to strategy, for me, fundamentally, what I'm there to do is support business objectives and drive the business forward using social media as a vehicle. So, although again, a team of one, as I said, let's bring in all key internal stakeholders into our content planning and strategy to then understand what are our key objectives as a business. How can we then utilize social to basically drive those forward? And then from there, how can we ensure that everything, because we're still fairly new, we're looking to do things on a campaign by campaign basis, probably. So if we're launching a new campaign, how do we have everyone that we need to have approval and eyes on that sort of concept, so that before we start working on it, we know that we've got the green light from the people that need to see it, because that's the only way that we can get through that kind of regulatory net or hoop. But at the same time, making sure that we've got the right people involved to launch a strategy forward, because I'm basically fed up of people saying that social is a silo, works in silo, and it is social and the social team will deal with that. For me, the reason I was brought in was to drive the business forward and help business objectives be achieved. So that is the fundamental of the strategy. Planning is different, right? Planning is where we maybe take it as a team of one and start orchestrating content calendars and understanding thematic content pillars that we want to talk about, with buy-in from the relevant people within the business. But when you say the word strategy, that for me underpins how my area of expertise, social, helps drive this business forward and achieves the goals that it wants, whether that's raising brand awareness in order to be more sort of renowned within industry in terms of looking to raise funding, or it may be talent acquisition. How can we make the Bank of London seem like a great place to work? Or customer acquisition, how can we basically be seen as thought leaders within our industry to sort of build that trust and dialogue with potential customers on the social? So whatever it may be, it's got to support business objectives. And I think bringing people in early is a good way to do it, because The worst thing is to get to the end of a campaign or ready to launch, and people go, well, hang on a second, that doesn't quite tick this box or that box. And it's
Yeah.
happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you. It's devastating, because then you've got no content and you've
Yeah.
also got to start from square one. So I hope
Hmm.
that in somewhat answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I have a follow-up question about for maybe social media managers or B2B marketers that maybe don't have that buy-in from leadership or executives yet. I think you said that you had the buy-in early on and they brought you on to use social media to support growth. But what advice do you have for social media managers that are trying to get buy-in about like using social media, or maybe investing in employee advocacy, or they want to be taken more seriously and have a seat at that strategy table? So do you have any advice for them for getting that buy-in?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you say, I was fortunate with those around me to understand. I mean, our CEO from the top is a huge believer in the power of social, which is fantastic. But then again, when it comes to buy-in, it's also key to kind of showcase what you want to achieve, but more importantly, why. So I think fundamentally there's kind of three pillars for this. I think the first one is use cases and competitor analysis. Show that your competitors are on those channels, whether
Yeah.
they're doing it well or not. That's another thing, because if they're doing it well, then you've got an easy case of saying, look, these guys are thriving. Look at the amount of reach, the followers they've got. Look at their engagement rates, etc., etc. We're missing a trick here. Flip it on its head. If they're doing badly, look, these guys are on there, but they're actually doing pretty terribly. There's some gaps in the market that we could do to infiltrate this market and become a leader pretty quickly if we do X, Y, and Z. So use cases are a great example, and I stand by the three words that my old CMO at Finastro has said: data, insight, action. Provide the data, offer the insights, and then act, and then build an action plan off the back of it. I think the other thing as well, understanding the people aspect.
Mhm.
So with regard to social media, I think training is one of the key things that you can implement, because a lot of a lot of management teams, a lot of directors of companies, whatever it may be, their perception of social media, whether it's personal usage or professional usage, will be a scroll on LinkedIn or a scroll on Instagram. It's like building that foundation to help them understand how you can help support them, to help me to help them effectively. So
Mhm.
training platforms, I think, are so important. Whether you direct them to LinkedIn Learning and those kind of things, I would suggest that you actually host training internally and show the value of social media, help people understand from a personal perspective, how to build that personal brand, but at the same
Mhm.
time, how that can help build a professional brand. And I think fundamentally, eyes need to be opened in how social media can benefit companies and support
Yeah.
business objectives. So I think if you position yourself kind of like we talked about before, not as just and social media as a kind of means to an end or an add-on, but actually this is how we can help elevate the business to help achieve business objectives. I think internal training and use cases are two key things to possibly to push that on. You'd hope in this day and age you get buy-in after that, but you never know.
Yeah. I think once you can show them that what the activities that you're doing on social helps to move the needle, I think that is when you hook them. So incredible
Definitely.
insights. Thank you for that. I want to move into a few tactics you use when you're creating content. So when you are sitting down to maybe batch your content or you're creating posts, do you have a few tips to make the content that you're creating engaging? Do you feel like it's challenging to make that kind of content more interesting in a
Yeah,
regulated
God.
industry?
Yeah. So I mean, right, banking, financial services, it's not known to be riveting. Let's be serious. So how do we change, that beta boring into something more exciting, right?
Yeah.
I think that's quite difficult. I think it's really dangerous to suddenly say, "Oh yeah, be funny," because you trying to be
Mm.
funny is difficult and can fall flat in its head. I think the first thing we talk about um, engaging. what's going to be most engaging is content that your audience wants to receive. So before we talk about, again, I guess we'll talk about start listening before you talk. Listen and understand what they want to consume. That's going to give you a good basis that you're probably going to generate more engaging content than just trying to, be off the cuff with your strategy, trying to jump on trends the whole time. Not every trend is going to work for you. So I think just listen to what your audience is saying. I think fundamentally is key. The next thing I'd say is give, give, give. How do you make your channel a destination? How do you make people think I need to follow them based on what you're giving? And the thing is upfront value. So many brands out there will ask for click-throughs to find out, the kind of the insights that they're potentially promoting. Give upfront value, give people a reason to follow you, and they'll come back for more. And I think the other thing is sort of thought leadership is such a generic statement that gets branded around all the time, but you can't be a thought leader if all you're doing is regurgitating other people's content. Like, I think it's so important to either give that contextual commentary for your audience that's like purpose of every post that's built for purpose. Or, I think a key trend, and I'm sure you'll agree this year, is, looking at those kind of much more focused nano influencers / content creators, and thinking how you can partner with them to add that kind of further endorsement for your thinking and reach new relevant audiences as a means of, one, bringing new people into your community, but also building engaging content that's likely to cater for dual purpose. And my final thing would be, and I've said it before, people, stop just thinking that your audience is going to come to your corporate channel and that's going to be great. The way that your people can multiply your reach and your engagement just by sharing, adding that little bit of contextual commentary, adding that little bit of added value, opinion, insight, whatever it may be. People want to engage with people. So the more that your employees and your are pushing stuff to their network, the better your reach, the better your engagement levels, and the more human and authentic and likelihood is the better brand trust and brand equity that you'll build. That's kind of a few that I had in mind.
Well, I think I really love that you pointed out giving to your audience, because this is something that me and Addie, my other colleague on the social team, we're really trying to do this year, is to cut back on how much we're asking from our audience and start giving them more. So we're transitioning into 80% give, 20% ask, because we realized we were just asking them to sign up for too many things and click to go onto our website. And it's just, first of all, it's not engaging. And second of all, social media now has to be its own entity. It is no longer just clicking to go somewhere else or go to a third-party website. You have to make it a space where people want to be, like you mentioned earlier. So I think it's all about cutting back on how much you're asking them to do and thinking about what can I do for them.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you think about it, whether it's B2C, B2B, whatever, when you're scrolling, the channels that you spend the most time on and engage with, they never ask you to go, like, if Cristiano Ronaldo is the most followed person in the world on social media, you follow him for updates there and then, because that's what you follow him, the reason you follow him for value. We've got to get into the minds of our consumers and our audiences when we're thinking about social media. They're not following us because they want to give us their details to generate a lead. They're following us for value and insight, and they want a reason or a hook to be able, basically, to be entertained, educated, or engaged. Simple as that. Now, it's our job to make sure that if we give that up front, hopefully their action will be that they want to give their information. But that can't just be, it can't be a transactional relationship. There's got to be a two-way thing. We've got to give them the value. And I think one other way of doing that, or one key way of doing that, is building trust. And I just thought of one other kind of, I guess, insight is there are so many companies that sort of pride themselves in this cultural calendar that they follow, and they celebrate every national holiday around the world, and they talk about every single day within the cultural calendar, be it Pride or any other sort of major cultural holiday or celebratory day. but they don't have any action. It's all lip service. It's all there as a tick box, as a means to an end, to hopefully generate some engagement off the back of something that everyone's talking about. And I
Mhm.
think we need to look at a quality over quantity approach and
Yeah.
actually provide tangible actions that are visible to our audiences based on what we're talking about. So if that means you're only talking about 12 things a year, but you can actually prove that you are making a difference in that area in some way and not just celebrating it because everyone else is,
Mhm.
I think that is another way of generating genuine, authentic engagement, and also building a real followership that actually want to follow you and your brand or yourself for real purposes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it can be hard sometimes to pick and choose what you are talking about on social because you always want it to be authentic and you always have to look at your audience and ask yourselves, is this something our audience cares about? Is this something
Exactly.
that us as a team we're celebrating, we're doing, we're consistently talking about? Because if not, it's just not authentic. And I wanted to talk to something that you brought up a little bit earlier. Um, and I think it can be challenging for social media professionals to give pushback to maybe leadership when they are asking you, hey, can you just post this link to the webinar? Or we have this event coming up. Can you just create a post? And I think that is when us as social media professionals have to be able to say, like, no, I know this will not perform well. And sometimes it might be the case of, okay, I'll post it and then I'll show you the results. And then maybe you won't ask me to do that next time. But how do you suggest, or do you have any tips or tricks on how we can like stand our own and give pushback and just communicate that this probably isn't going to work and you need to trust me to do my job?
Yeah, I mean, I I think we've got a specifically, or sorry, I should say, especially hard remit considering everyone's an expert in social, right?
Yeah.
So it's everyone's got Instagram, or most people do, or Facebook, or someone's on some kind of platform, and I think use cases again is a I think, well, actually the first thing before you get that is built way back when in your strategy. I think you've got to iron out right at the beginning in your planning phases that when it comes to the content that we are that is going on our channels, especially the proactive kind of approach, we've got to have everyone, all internal stakeholders um aligned before that campaign launches, and once that green light goes and we start, it can't be stopped. And I think it's, unless, unprecedented circumstances. But I think simultaneously, when it comes to reactive strategy, there also has to be an approval process in line with that, because, and I think once approval processes are signed off by those at the top, it shouldn't, and it can't kind of be ignored or fast tracked,
Mhm.
because just like any other area of the business, you wouldn't suddenly ask a sales guy to send out an email that ask for a contract to be sent through a week before with a warm lead just because someone's going on holiday. It just wouldn't
Yeah.
happen. It's the same kind of thing. I think the key is to try and build respect for the industry and for your role based on things like how you can support business objectives, because that would suddenly make people take it more seriously. um but I think the other thing is, and as I said, use cases. Like, there was a time where I was asked very this was a while ago, but asked very frequently to post things, tomorrow or yesterday, or let's just get it out and see what
Mm.
happens.
Yeah.
Now, that goes against the grain of all strategy and planning that we'd been implemented for the past year.
Yeah.
But eventually you just have to say, okay, fine, we will just do it, and then we will showcase the results. And I think the best thing to do is strengthen numbers. So don't just show it as an isolated post, but maybe build up a comparison of, okay, this was the results of the last 10 posts where we have been asked to do that. Whereas if you look at our content calendar here, this is the last 10 posts of planned activity that we've scheduled. Now, the likelihood is, unless a freak viral occurrence, you're gonna have much better results on the latter, on the planned stuff.
Mhm.
And I think, the numbers don't argue. You can't argue with numbers, can you? Even if you
Yeah.
can argue with opinions, and they love to. So numbers is kind of your best friend there, I think.
Yeah.
There's a long-winded answer for you.
Yeah, definitely numbers do not lie. And also, you get taken way more seriously when you have numbers to back up your
Exactly.
argument. And that's why I could not let you leave the show without talking about metrics and how you can use social media to demonstrate success. So, I'd love to know, what metrics are you measuring, and what metrics do you report to leadership to show that social media can help grow and drive your business?
So yeah, very interesting topic of conversation is metrics and measuring success. What does success look like? And I think, you'll hear people chatting about, oh, impressions are the most important because that shows how many eyes are on your posts, or no, followers are so important because that shows the sheer size of your community, X, Y, Z, engagement rate, blah blah blah. For me, again, social not being seen as this separate entity, not being seen to be working in a silo. Your most important metrics are the ones that support your business objective or your reason for the purpose of social media at that time for the business or whoever you're reporting to. So if we're looking at, we maybe only be looking at infiltrating, a niche area of or niche audience because we're looking to drive an investment round or something like that. So the the metrics will probably be a lot less impressive in terms of maybe reach numbers and those kind of things. But in terms of accuracy and purpose of posts and engagement levels and clicks, it could be, that really kind of showcases success if it's a small audience. But I
Mhm.
guess I might flip it slightly. Instead of saying what things we're looking at the moment, we're in a phase of brand awareness right now. We're looking to um,
Mhm.
grow our brand recall, build a bit of a community, and start building brand equity and trust. So for that, I'd say, yeah, of course. I think you've got two stems to your strategy. You've got the community aspect, which is, are people within your followership responding positively to your content or your post. And in that respect, I'd say engagement rates are the key,
Yeah.
because that for me is showing how many people are actually interested in what you've got to say. And with that as well, like dive into it a bit more, like how many are likes, but how many are also comments, how many people are
Mhm.
actually contributing and trying to reach out and create a dialogue with you. And I think that's really important as well, because it's very easy to click a like, but if there are actually responses and you're actually building content that is driving a two-way dialogue and engagement, and I think fantastic. But then I
Mhm.
think the other thing is, you want the impressions, because that's how you bring new people, like-minded people, into your community at the same time. So that's when that sort of impression number is fantastic. But then again, how do you know whether you've sort of convinced them to come through? You can't track a follow from an engagement or an impression all the way through. So
Mhm.
I think it's very, you say the numbers don't lie, but I think the core thing is, whatever your objective, make sure you understand the key metrics that you want to measure, but more
Yeah.
importantly, what they mean in the measurement of success, and then communicate that upwards. So when they ask to see the results, you're able to say, we've achieved X amount of, this Y amount of that, and this is what it means. Because I think
Mhm.
fundamentally, metrics are there to as success factors of a campaign, but it's more determining what those metrics mean. I
Mhm.
think that's the key.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in just one underlying.
Yeah, there's no one golden metric that you can look at and
It's
say,
exactly what I was going to
yes,
say. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like, yes, this means we're successful, which I think is hard, but there's so many metrics to choose from and so many things you can look at. And something that I look at is, like, on a weekly basis, I'm looking at our impressions and our engagements to make sure that they're growing at the same time. But for us, brand awareness is our biggest goal and growth overall on social. So I'm looking at year over year growth. And it is so important to zoom in more, because just because you have maybe an increase of engagements, it might not always be good. Like if you zoom in, you might have negative comments. So it's more important to look and see, are you reaching the people you want to reach? And are the engagements you're earning meaningful? Because if they're not meaningful, then you need to switch it up. Because sometimes you can look and say, oh, yeah, we have an increase in our engagement rate, but maybe it's not what it seems. So it's always important to dive in a little deeper.
Contextualize metrics. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I agree. And yeah, I think, looking at the metrics that you've alluded to there, but then also thinking about brand perception. So looking at slightly deeper and not just looking at sort of, page analytics, but how are we perceived online? You're looking out to things like listening. Obviously, they give you that really nice brand sentiment metric. What are people saying about your brand? Like, it's important, as I said, to listen as well as talk, and that's kind of a key factor that we're looking to implement more. But I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a tricky question, the metric one, because it's subjective at the end of the day. But I think people get lost in the data, whether it's too far away or too honed in.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, we're nearing the end of the show here, and I have one final question to ask you that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what is one thing you wish your colleagues in other departments knew about working in social media?
Yeah, so it sounds simple, but just the lack of perception or understanding around what actually entails in the role. It's not simply scrolling on a feed, click like on different things. There are so many different strings to a social media manager's bow, be it content creation, be it analysis, be it strategy building, whatever it may be. But I think more importantly than that, that was kind of, that's a joke comment, because I know, it's becoming more and more sort of accepted as an actual job. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's that it shouldn't be viewed. It's something that I've harped on a lot about today, but it shouldn't be viewed as kind of a means to an end, or a bit part of a company.
Yeah,
it's an amazing vehicle to drive a company forward, to raise its awareness, to engage new people, to build trust, all these different things that marketing are looking to achieve. Your sales guys, if trained up well, can achieve incredible results and conversion rates through social selling, through getting active and building actual relationships. So I think it's understanding as a whole how it can support a business and be a vehicle for positive change and conversion. And I would love more people to be able to engage a wider net of internal stakeholders to get to buy into their ideas and help build them, because we want experts from other areas of the business to collaborate with us and then produce output that is catered to that audience, instead of us always having to do it from scratch by ourselves. So for me, if anyone's listening out there, that's what I'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for being here today. I have learned so much from you, and I know our audience is probably taking notes right now. Thank you so much for all the incredible insights and tips and tricks. So yeah, thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having me. I've been an avid listener, so yeah, hopefully this one adds some insights as well.